So, a few days ago, I saw Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 in theaters, and it was really awesome. I expected that considering the series' track record so far. These movies almost always breathe a bit of life back in the cinemas, and this one is absolutely no exception. Now, I do just want to say before I start this review, you should keep in mind that this is only part 1 of the story. And while this movie does work as a standalone, it's very possible that some of the small things I criticize here and there are just a result of it being a somewhat incomplete story. It's mostly a great film, but there are some very small things here and there that weren't in line with the rest of its quality. I think the first thing that a lot of people are going to notice about this one is that the tone is considerably different than a lot of the previous entries. The tone for this is probably the most similar to the first film than any that we've gotten since. It's not a pure thriller or anything, and it doesn't quite reach the paranoia that De Palma gave the series. There are also some great comedy bits and obviously some great set pieces, but there is also a real sense of fear and adrenaline there that isn't present in a lot of the movies. The visuals here also really contribute to this sort of constricting feeling that the story puts you in. It's not shot on film but on digital to really reflect both what's happening and to reflect the plot itself, and it still looks really beautiful. Digital isn't always the best medium to go with, but they made something really special visually here. The editing is also super good. They do some stuff here that the series hasn't really seen at all, and it is kind of a bit of a visual spectacle. There was one moment during a very tragic scene in the film where the editing really just made the scene, and also made the scene so much more emotional, whereas it would have been a lot less so if they hadn't made the decisions that they did. On the other hand, the movie is also really funny, as I mentioned before, and while the McQuarrie mission films have always had a bit of humor in them, I think this one in particular reaches some really good heights. There's a moment in a car chase scene that almost feels like it's pulled straight out of a Looney Tunes short, but I really love it because it just works so well for what this universe is. It really reminds me of how funny Ghost Protocol was. The film is still very tense, but it knows when to laugh at itself, and those tones both work very well together, and you never get the sense of them clashing. The plot of this movie centers around artificial intelligence, and while I do love a lot of what is done with this, if I had to give some complaints to the film, I really don't think that there is enough exploration into what this AI actually is. It works very well as a fictional exploration of the real life things that are going on in the world right now, but also simultaneously, the idea isn't necessarily as fleshed out as much as it should. That being said, there are still some really bone-chilling moments in here dealing with these ideas. Probably one of the better sort of MacGuffins in the series that Ethan and his team hunt after. I also wish there were generally more character moments between all the characters. Not only do you have quite a few returning characters from past films, you also have some new characters that we're just getting introduced to. The film kind of struggles in balance on all of them. That being said, the cast here is incredibly cool. I love that the main team, disregarding the new characters, is made up of Ethan, Ilsa, Luther, and Benji. It feels like a sort of greatest hits Mission Impossible team, and I think that's just super fun in a way that feels really deserved, especially considering we're 7 movies in now. There's a real difference between something like this and say something like The Flash, where characters from the past are shown to be clapped at and nothing more. This feels really emotional and deserved. One of my favorite new characters is Pom Clemente, who plays this super cool evil henchman named Paris, and I just sort of adore the character. I think this is the first villain since Philip Seymour Hoffman's in Mission Impossible 3 that's really felt just super threatening in a way that sort of hypes you up while also really sending chills down your spine. She doesn't have any lines, so most of her story is told through very physical acting. Pom just really hits it out of the park. I also think it's super cool that when she does speak, she's always speaking in print. I don't know, it's just cool to really get the most out of multilingual actors, so I think that's pretty cool. Then there's Grace, played by Haley Atwell, who is our new character on the hero side, and I really like her as well. Whereas Ilsa in Rogue Nation was portrayed as someone who could have a lot in common with Ethan and almost be a female Ethan Hunt herself, Grace is used as much more of a foil to him. She isn't really wanting to be a cool IMF spy. She's a thief who gets wrapped up into this plot unwillingly. I like that her unwillingness for a large section of the story to join the group is played out with both comedy and drama really effectively. The scene where she's actually kind of joining this team and becoming another big character that we'll get to know is just super well written, and it might just be like one of my favorite scenes in the series. Now, with Paris, the main villain of this film is actually Gabriel, played by Isaiah Morales. We're shown that he had a past altercation with Ethan, which fuels his hatred of him throughout the film. A lot of this character is portrayed through subtext, which is an interesting idea, but I don't think it actually makes him as threatening as he should be. We're told that he wants to see the most pain possible throughout the world, and that he will use AI to see it through, which is a super cool motive. I just wish I knew why it was that he is this way. Because of this, his character can feel kind of empty, which sucks in a series where that usually isn't the case at all. It also sucks because Ethan really hates this guy, and while it does make sense for the character and the events that happen in the story, part of me wishes that we knew more about this guy other than the basic facts that are told to us so we could cheer Ethan on even more. Finally, just with the major new characters, Shea Wiggum plays this sort of officer character who hunts down Ethan for the greater good, and there's a lot of deep questions asked with him. While he isn't the most elaborate character, I still really liked him. He wasn't just a cop dude. The series has always explored the inner workings of what's right and what's wrong in government, and it doesn't really stop with Wiggum's character, which I really appreciate, especially at a time like this. As per usual with Mission Impossible, the technical aspects of this movie are just absolutely off the chain. The action is everything you would expect from one of these movies, and I remember being in the theater and like a lot of people around me, probably like 60% of the people around me were literally like on the edge of their seat. Maybe probably more than 60%. A lot of people were really, into it. They do stuff that's really hard for you to wrap your head around here, and it's just super cool. Though the obvious big set pieces of the film are definitely impressive, there's also just some more subtle stuff which I think should really be appreciated. There's this sort of hand-to-hand fight in the middle of a movie that takes place in this very, very tight Italian alleyway. Just thinking about how they did it, like I said, it hurt my brain a little bit. The easy way to do this would be to just get a smaller camera, but I think they literally just shoved a super huge camera in this super tight alley and somehow made the fight scene work. Because in the film itself, they do some shots where they're almost kind of bragging to the viewer, being like, look how cool we are and look what we can do. The fact that it is such a big camera in this super tight alleyway, you can like see that in the frame, which is really interesting. Think of the logistics of that, how they made the fight scene work, and I don't know, it's just crazy. There's another scene in this film where they do the mask motif that the series is kind of famous for, and I might be wrong about this one, but I'm pretty sure that they made some sort of hybrid between the two actors' faces. Again, I could be wrong, but if they did, it's completely lost on me how they actually did that. I'm pretty sure it wasn't just contacts, and that they actually used makeup to sort of blend these two actors' faces together, and I thought that was just super cool, even though it was way more simplistic than a lot of the things in this film. It's a really cool conceptual idea. So even though this film isn't perfect, it genuinely might be one of the most politically relevant films in theaters right now, and I mean that with absolute sincerity. Just a warning here, this is where I'm going to begin getting into spoilers. I'll put a little time on the screen now to show where I'm not talking about spoilers if you want to skip that. So there's a bit in a chase scene where Benji is telling Ethan where to go through a satellite, and it's something that the series has done quite a lot before. But while he's talking to Ethan, the AI mutes his comm, copies his voice, and tells Ethan to go somewhere completely different, and it leads to a very tragic scene involving the death of one of the main characters. This is kind of literally what is happening with creatives throughout our world right now. The Writers and Screen Actors Guild of America are on strike right now because of things like this. These companies want to use AI to get what they want, and they will do it no matter how many people suffer. This film definitely has some spots where it needs to work on its story, but the idea that some insane idiot would use AI to dominate the world and get whatever the hell he wants for the rest of his life isn't fantasy at all. It is happening right now. And as insane as it may sound, just like in this film, it is going to result in people being hurt, people dying, and people losing their job. It's going to change industries and stuff. Just for that, this film gets put on an insanely high pedestal. It's so rare, especially now, to have a big franchise film like this make a statement that means so much. It's just an incredibly special thing, especially right now when we have so many blockbusters that are scared to say anything. It makes this message even more powerful. Basically, just to wrap it up, this film has some minor problems, but it's such a cool movie that it really doesn't matter. If I had to summarize my thoughts on it, that would be it. Mission Impossible Fallout is considered one of the best action films of all time, and this isn't going to be far behind it. In fact, it might even be in front. Part 2 is probably going to be even more insane, and I just can't wait to see what they have in store. Films like these really impact the industry for the absolute best, and it helps out so much that this is coming out at such a relevant time. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, go watch it, and if you have, tell me what you thought about it in the replies down below. If you want to, it really helps this channel out, like and subscribe. If you don't want to, that's cool too. But yeah, that is the end of the video, and yeah, bye.